Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, and welcome to another evening on Talk and Sip. Talk and Sip Saturday night, 23rd of September 2023. And believe it or not, we're heading all the way to Christmas. Can you believe that? September, October, November, December. Waboom. There we go, Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to stay, with any long drag out opening. But definitely tonight it's going to be a very interesting evening. As of course, every evening is always interesting. And what we're going to do is look at the Jamaica scandals and public office resignations. As you can see, there's been a few resignations or call for resignation or one resignation, if anything, of the Speaker of the House. And there's lots of implications to that and lots of discussion we want to have with that with those who are joining in. I want to thank those who are joining in on TikTok, those on Facebook, those on YouTube, and it is much appreciated for you to come in as well. And if you want to come in as well, I have the facilities where you can also join in the discussion. Good evening, and of course, there we are. I don't know what you're drinking, but there I'm not going to touch it as yet. But there you are. You got Merlot, you got water, you got Bailey's. That doesn't mean to say I'm going to be drinking it. You can tell me what you're drinking as well over there on TikTok. What are you drinking tonight? And that's very important. But listen, one of the very important thing is when it come on to when political leaders resign. Yeah, when members of parliament resign, the implication and why they should resign. That is something which I think people are talking about. And also, you had the recent incident whereby Greg Christie, who is the Integrity Commission, one of the directors there. They're calling him to resign based on some utterance which he made. And I was sort of doing a little research and sort of getting a sort of picture of when people should resign, and especially in political office. And one of the things, especially about an MP, for argument's sake, the role of a member of parliament is a solemn duty to represent the will and interests of the people. It is a position of trust, and as such, the standards of integrity must remain unwavering. When an elected official faces investigation, the first and foremost question should be one of public trust. If the allegation casts a shadow of doubt upon the ability to serve with honesty and transparency, it becomes their moral imperative to step aside, at least temporarily. After all, the public's faith in the democracy or our democracy relies on the principle of accountability. Resignation, however, should not be automatic, nor should it be a knee-jerk reaction to every investigation. We must respect the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. And that's why I was a bit concerned as to why the Speaker of the House step aside or resign from the Speaker of the House, but also went and resigned from the MP. That one baffles me. We must respect that presumption of innocence, as I said earlier, until proven guilty. A fair and impartial process is paramount to ensure that allegations are thoroughly examined, allowing the truth to emerge. But when the evidence is substantial, and public confidence in the accused MP is significantly eroded, resignation becomes an ethical act that upholds the dignity of the office and the institution of Parliament. In determining when an MP should resign during an investigation, one must strike a balance between the individual's right and the collective responsibility to maintain the credibility of our democratic system. Transparency, accountability, and the best interests of the nation should guide the decision. If an investigation results in a conviction, and this is something which I was saying, or if the accusation remains unresolved, resignation should be the path taken, acknowledging that service to the public demands the highest moral standards. Our duty is not just to ourselves or our political affiliation, but to the people we serve, and their trust us is our most valuable asset. And that is something that I just wanted to start the show with, just to set that sort of stage, because I believe it's very important when it comes on to accountability, responsibility, and transparency in public office, whether an MP whether Integrity Commission, someone in the political zone, So here we go. O'Neill, how are you doing, buddy?
Hey, Silverin, how are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I can't complain. I'm trying to make sure that I'm actually set a standard so nobody come back to me and say my standards is falling.
It's a rainy day in Washington D.C.
Oh, it's rainy day over there. Okay.
Rain. It's gonna rain for the entirety of the weekend, but it's fine. Keeps
Is
everything.
is is it trying to wash out Biden?
Who knows? He's obviously he's gonna stay inside. So it's a good guess.
Thank you. Us. Oh, Veronica having stone ginger wine. What are you drinking?
I just have some white, no, actually red. I'm drinking some cab, one that was left over from a couple of days ago. So, but it's still good.
Yeah, just having a touch of wine, which normally it doesn't. It's like beer. No matter how small the beer is, I never finish it. And I
Yeah.
never finish a bottle of beer or nothing like that. I think it may be because my father, when I was a little boy, he used to give me the leftovers of his bottle for King or Red Stripe or so like that. And that was a way. I was like his cue when he
Yeah.
wanted to leave the guys, the man, to go home. And he said, "Boy, the boy want me to leave now." My late dad.
Nice.
you know. But how are you? But anyhow, I want to move swiftly on, Anil, in regards to the Jamaica. Well, the Saturday night with the rum bar concept and the diaspora discussions that we have. And ladies and gentlemen, most of the topic on a Saturday night tends to lean towards Jamaica. Uh, but there's so much development, so much things happening that a friend of mine, you always send me something and say the latest jam flicks. And I said, what is it now? The latest in the jam flicks series. And as he sent me something, another one bounced it off the ground.
Yeah.
And what was very interesting in Jamaica was that there was a call for the Speaker of the House. That
Mhm.
is her name is a very very interesting name. It's a very, I don't know if
Uh,
you can pronounce her name on it.
Dalrymple, Dalrymple, I think her.
Yeah,
I don't know if I pronounce it
not
correctly.
Rumpen still in skin, no. I apologize for that. But yeah, she was yeah, she was implicated in a few investigations by the Integrity Commission, and people started to demand for her to resign.
Yeah.
Um, the different advocacy network, JAMF, NIA, and lots of people are saying that, 'cause it was determined that Mistress Marisa Dalrymple Filbert should be charged for 4 counts of breach of sections 51B, Parliament integrity, 1973 for making false statements, December 31st, 2015, February 21st, 2016, December 31st, 2016, and December 31, 2017, and to determine that she should be charged for these 4 counts of breach of section 43.2. There was also the big push for her to recuse herself from the Speaker of the House while this investigation is going on.
Mhm.
So there was this massive push for her to step aside, and then before people could get into it, she actually did. She did more than step aside. She actually went for the jugular. She resigned everything. She just said, "Why am I going about my business? I'm the own." Yeah.
I think she probably taken a principal position. So I read she had a statement that she put out, and you could read the integrity report.
Yeah.
It seems, based on the allegation in the report, is that it's public disclosure. There was
Mm.
some motor vehicle, as I read it, and that she forgot to include in the report, and therefore that exclusion is based on what I've read is why they have suggested she be charged in criminal court. Um, I think the larger question, Silburn, is what's the decorum and behavior of our public officials, right?
Mm.
One could look at that two different angle and say she's resigning because she's like, look, I got to protect my name. Because if I recall, she's a lawyer by
She's a
training.
lawyer as well.
She's
Actually,
a lawyer.
her office was robbed the same day. Actually, when
Oh, wow.
she resigned, that's what I heard as well. Yeah.
So she's a lawyer by training, and
Yeah.
obviously she's Speaker of the House. She was Member of Parliament for somewhere in Trelawney, I think, South Trelawney. And you could look at it and say if you're serving the public and there's any hint that there are integrity issue, what's the behavior? And in this case, I don't know the details as much other than what we read, that she left out a motor vehicle. The question becomes, is that a chargeable offense in the court of law, that she forgot to include a motor vehicle? I don't know the answer to that, Silver, but
Yeah.
it seems to me that if you breach the trust of the people, then you should. You shouldn't let anyone call for you to resign. You should actually resign, right?
Mm.
Because there's a hint of trust, and I think what she's probably doing by, as you say, going for the juggler, is saying, I have to protect my name, right? Which is a plausible outcome for her. And then the larger question becomes, who should call for resignation? We have a case here in the States right now where senator out of New Jersey has been indicted by the FBI for corruption charges. A lot of both sides have been calling for
Is it
him.
Bob's? What's his name again? Senator?
Senator Bob Menendez.
Oh, actually, I just typed senator and it came up. He's the number one senator. He just the first. I just typed sen and his name came up here. Robert Menendez. Yes.
He's denied the allegation. The evidence out there, if you read it, seems serious. And the whole question of, you're innocent until proven guilty. Do you go through the process? And I think he's stepping down as a chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, which he should. The question becomes, does he resign from the Senate? And it's the same thing with this lady, the Speaker of the House, is that for her, maybe in her mind, Silver, she's like, I cannot be effective as a member of Parliament with this cloud over my head. And it's the same thing for any public officials, is, are you effective in sort of doing the business for the people who actually elected you to represent them? And it seems that maybe Miss Dalrymple decided that she cannot be effective, and she decided to resign. And then we'll see how this plays out. If it goes to court and then she's
Exonerated.
Exonerated, then right, I think in her mind she's like, I can't get my name be mixed up in the charge if it's what she said she just barely omitted in the disclosure, this vehicle. Then the question becomes, was that a charge of an offense under the statute? And I don't know the statute as well, but it goes just further in sort of the public perception of our public official. How should they behave? Because we hope our public official has the utmost integrity. And one could argue and debate that there's a lot of our public officials that follow that train of thought to be unvarnished in their reputation and integrity. But it's for her, I think. She's saying I'm done, but there could be a larger angle if you look at it, right? So there's an election coming up in 2025, I think.
Well, according to what they're saying, and you could call it at any time. You know what I mean? Watching the waters.
Constitutionally, it's due in 2025, right?
Yeah.
So if in the news cycle, you sort of alluded to it in your opening. It's so fast. Every 30 seconds, it's changing. And I think, by her bowing out now, it take that sort of narrative off the table. Because 2 years from now or whenever the election comes, nobody's going to recall it. You and I chatted. There was the gentleman, I think during COVID, who was caught on camera in a domestic abuse situation.
They say alleged because
that's alleged, right? But it was the story of the day for about a week, and then he did not resign from Parliament, and you haven't heard anything since, right? So it's a matter of the trust of the public, and I think if you're a public official, you should be there to serve the public. And if you cannot serve the public in an effective way, the good thing to do is resign from that. But the question becomes also, there's always politics in play because, one side is going to call regardless of what it is, they're going to say, hey, this person need to resign, whatever the reason. You see it here
Yeah.
every second. Someone is calling for someone to step down
Mm.
because of some perceived malice or perceived corruption, etc. But it's up to the people sometimes to decide.
I take a slightly different, well, not different position, maybe same position, but from a different angle in regards to the Speaker of the House, and especially one who has put themselves forward for political office, and especially I call the Member of Parliament bit as the base. That is what I call the base. The Member of Parliament is the base.
Mhm.
You may be a cabinet member, you may be a minister, but really that is the base. Because like in the UK, if there's a similar situation like this and someone is exempt, is unless it's Boris Johnson who just want to just get away and make lots of money on the high seas, they tend to always pull back and they want to spend time with their constituents. Because when you're in public office like this and you become a cabinet member and Speaker of the House, you don't really get the time to really spend with your constituents. Person like Rhoda Crawford, you can see that she's spending a lot of time with her constituent. Actually, she's the only person I see who's vocal and up there really in her constituency every day. Maybe I don't know if she's got any sort of office or so, but she's just really into it. And I remember when I interviewed her, she said, Silver, all I want to do is just really spend time. And I'm not for P or J or whatever like that. I just want to build my constituents. I think that it is questionable sometimes when an MP sort of resign from the MP when they are being uh, investigated. And O'Neill, Jamaica is very, I mean, the people of Jamaica, they will just call you guilty from day one still, but really and true, the process is there whereby they are presumed innocent until proven guilty. And if she, and what if this thing turn out whereby she's innocent and exonerated, she will be able to spend that time. And I think that maybe it can be seen to a certain way as a slap in the face, but then at the same time, as you rightly put, it could be a situation where she said, listen, I can't deal with this, I can't deal with this. Let me just, I got my practice and her name, just like with Isaac Buchanan when he mentioned those things. Of
Yeah.
course, the bar is going to call her into question. The bar is going to start investigate, because one of the tenets of law is that you're supposed to be above reproach. What I mean?
Yeah.
And if we get caught into anything dodgy or steal or I always say to people all the while, I got to watch my name. It's not just my name, but governed by certain things. And I think maybe that's what she is. But so I don't know what people say.
Yeah.
Michelle, what you guys say and what Veronica say and
Yeah.
what people on TikTok say. Yeah. Uh-huh.
I think to your point, Silvern, she has a law firm that she
Yeah.
has to run. And then if your clients start questioning integrity, right,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
there's implication for that. So maybe she's weighing the options in terms of her public duty as a public official, conducting the business of the people, being the Speaker of the House, running a practice. And I think she might make the determination that it's not worth it in the long run. Because now, if I'm trying to get new clients and you're reading this sort of thing in the paper, then you're more reluctant to go to another law firm than
Yeah.
ours, right?
There
So
won't be no, there won't be any new clients. Just wait.
exactly.
Especially if you're gonna get into some land deals or some stuff like that,
Yeah,
whereby
exactly.
there's question of integrity. Yeah,
Exactly. So there are implication to her reputation, and maybe she's protecting that, but it's always political in nature when any public official is caught. The other side is always going to call for resignation because it's a narrative, right? To say, hey, see, this person was caught in XYZ. But as any body, right? If you think of the body of law, right? You're a lawyer, you're in the legal business. You can't police everybody, and there will be people or lawyers that have been sort of convicted. In Jamaica, for example, there are lawyers that have been convicted and lost
regular.
their
Yeah,
license because of integrity issues. So, but you can't police, and the question becomes then: do you commend? Right. So if you look at it at another lens, do you commend her and say, given the report, she resigned and said, look, I'm just going to resign everything. Do you say then that's how political officials should behave? Do you believe that if any hint of distrust among the public,
Mm.
should it be that whoever, if they're a public official, should immediately resign? That's the larger question.
Yeah, and and I think there may need to be some sort of test and some high level of what should I say, weight, because this particular weight, in a sense, is very heavy. The one
Hmm.
which is set out there, and I've got all of it set out with all these different. Because the big question now is, will the DPP take on this case, if anything?
Hmm.
Uh, I think that you will always have persons on the other side. Um, calling out things and because they're trying to undermine it. That's what politics is about. I mean, even with Greg Christie, which we're going to touch on briefly, he just uttered two words: ask the government, ask the government, three words, and they're asking him to resign. And
Right.
there's this massive thing about resignation, about public officials, the implication, what it sends, the message it sends. But we are seeing in Jamaica, in a sense, whereby you got person like Warmington, you got different persons who say certain things. Of course, I'm just going to say alleged, because I don't have the time to get into this lawsuit on people saying you're what should I say, you're defaming their character. So I won't go into that. But people always say these guys do not own up to certain things, and no matter what people say, it's like they don't care. So therefore, is it that the speaker have a high level of integrity where she said, listen, my name,
Hmm.
my name is more important than everything. I always say to people sometimes that my name is more important than an OBE, a CBE, or anything. My name, Sidiel, for my father and my mother, should be the top name. You know what I mean? The O'Neill, your name should be the top name, your surname should be the top name, not
Hmm.
not not stick behind somebody and whereby somebody make you, but you make that name. And maybe that is what she's saying. My
Right.
name is high level.
And it seems if you read our statement, that's exactly what she's saying, is that she has to protect her name,
Mm,
which I give her, I commend her for that. And this is where you and I chatted. The thing that I like with the UK
yeah,
in terms of how they do investigations, um, they like to do John Doe
yeah,
for a reason, because if you're found not guilty, then you're not tried in the court of public opinion,
yeah.
which, in these times, if you do something and you're tried and you're found not guilty,
Mm.
there's also an element that you were found guilty in the public opinion,
Public,
because,
yes.
right. So I think for her is that if the case get acquitted, there will still be this cloud over
Hanging.
her head that says she was charged for something. And I think it could be that she's trying to fight for her name, which you rightly said, your name is something, your family name is a super important name that you try to protect, as much as you can. And then the other piece is, what is the standards of, sort of public parties? So you look at the JLP, the PMP, you know, should each minister, member of parliament sign some document that says this is how I intend to behave, right? Is there a standard that we should set? And then should we lead by example? Not should we, the party leaders should lead by examples, right? So those are the things I think what she has set, to be honest, if you
Yeah.
just think through it, Silburn, is that she has just set a standard. She had just set a precedent that says if you're accused of X, the right thing to do is resign.
And this is what a lot of people are actually saying, is that it's like a new standard, it's like a precedent which has been set, which has not been seen for a long time, whereby an MP or a public official who's is caught into the pants down in disrepute and somewhat holding the government, credibility at stake, then they step aside in order for things to go on, because there's going to be so much distractions. The only unfortunate thing I saw was whereby the Minister of Information alluded or said something to the extent that they were all like, or they're trying to hold her back. They're trying to tell her not to resign, but she insisted. I think they're
Mhm.
trying to say the credibility with her, but then that doesn't look good upon the credibility of the government.
Yeah. Just, and the thing is that when you just think about it, right? Yeah, good for her, right?
Yeah,
Because to me, and this is just my perspective, others have different, is that if you're a public official and there's any inkling of distrust by the public, you should resign because you're not able to effectively do your job because there's
yeah,
always a cloud. It's just like if you're doing business with someone and
yeah,
so and that person in your mind, you cannot trust that person. Every time you try to do a business transaction with that person, in your mind, you're like, oh man, I'm taking a risk.
yeah,
Obviously, you're going to try to mitigate the risk, but every time in your head is like, is this person, can this person be trusted in this sort of transaction we're doing? And I think for her, every time we talk about the client, someone is like, can I trust this lady?
yeah,
Right. And then the other piece around, what she's charged for allegedly around the car is that, yes, we should hold our public official to the highest standards. And you make sure you pay attention to details. And her going through and say, you know what, I'm just going to resign. Yeah, the public might see that and say, yes, you're doing it in the interest of the public
mm,
to ensure that, if you are not able to represent the people in your constituency, I think it's South Trelawney, then
yeah,
you
Trelawney, yeah.
do the right thing, right? So,
But then,
um,
the big question is going to be this: you're a lawyer, and you didn't read the fine prints.
but that's my point, right? It's like, right? It's like it's just like one of the thing and people know who do business with me, and I don't I don't sign anything that I read it first, and
Mm,
even I'll go to places and they'll give me and say sign here. I'm reading it, and people will say, "Are you a lawyer?" I was like, "I'm not a lawyer, but I got to read what I'm signing," right? And you have to read, but you just made an excellent point. Is that lawyers are supposed to pay attention to fine details, and it's one of those things where you omit something, and you have to assume positive intent sometimes that she, as she said, she just forgot about it. But who knows?
and not to press the send button that very quickly, because sometimes you press the send button, you start to reread and say, oh my days, oh my days, and then you're quickly starting to look for that recall button.
You know what I do? I put a delay. So in your email, you can put a delay. So
Okay.
I typically put a delay at 2 minutes for my emails. So if I need to recall it, I just go, it's like, okay, I put a delay in my emails for that exact
So you
reason.
say you got a 2 minute window to it by the
Yeah,
time you go back and look at it. Yeah.
yeah.
But it, in moving on from the minister there, and where I've seen where it is, because there's a lot of debate which is happening regarding it on different networks.
Mhm,
Uh, but the big one now is, I don't know if it's a big one or so. It is Greg Christie.
mhm.
Greg Christie, who is he was the former contractor general, and I
Yeah,
tell
yeah.
you what,
He's now the Integrity Commission
yeah.
executive director.
And I tell you what, I was so impressed by him that every time I went to Jamaica, I used to have a private audience with him. We never
Yeah,
took pictures.
yeah,
Never took pictures. I always go and look for him in his office there in New Kingston there,
yeah.
with Greg Christie. And that I would say that the level of job that these guys are doing, there must be some high level of pressure on him
Of
to
course.
be, yeah,
He's the Integrity Commission executive director
yeah,
that is charged with, sort of investigating the government. It's like what we call our inspector general
yeah,
here, right? Um, and for him, I don't know the context, right? So I sort of watched it, listened to it. I don't know if there were other contexts when he said, ask the
as the
government, but
government, yeah.
there was a incident where
Oh,
someone,
by the way, that's the latest tagline now. Everybody's saying "Ask the government" now. That's the
yeah,
latest
it's like
tagline going on. Ask the
it,
government.
it's like um, there was an incident where someone from the commission was shot, right?
Yes.
And the someone, I guess, is a reporter, was asking him, and he said, "Ask the government." So the question becomes: Is he saying ask the government because I'm not a law enforcement official, so I can't give you info? Is he
Yeah.
is that the umbrella, or he's implying
Implying-
something else, right?
Yes.
And the thing that I believe, Silburn, is that public official has to watch the words they use,
Mm.
because every word, especially in a social media rich environment that we live, every word, people hang on those words. So
Yes.
you have to be super intentional about the words you use. And in this case, who knows what he means? You could interpret it in various different ways and means. And then people are saying he should resign. And the question I have, resign for what?
Yeah.
That you're interpreting that he's implying that the government has something to do with this?
Yes.
Or if you look at it and assume positive intent, is he saying, well, go ask the police, right?
Because the police is like an arm of the government, if
Right,
anything. Ask the
exactly.
government. If he had
Exactly.
said, if he had said, ask the police, that may
Right.
be a bit much better. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's where I think officials have to be a little more precise in their language, right? And they have to be very intentional. It's the same thing with you as a lawyer.
Mm.
Words matter. When you're writing a legal opinion, the words and the words you string together matters in context of whatever you're writing. It's the same thing here as
Mm.
a public official, especially one that is such a high level, a high bar in the sense that he's the investigator of the government,
Yes.
right? One has to not be careless with words is the term I would use. You have to be much more intentional. And I think, people might have their perspective of why they're calling for his resignation. Because as I said, maybe the clip is edited, I don't know. But
Yeah.
it's someone say, hey, ask the government. I don't know. He would have to now come out. And if I were him, that's what I would have done, is come out and then sort of clarify what I meant, right? So people are not trying to decipher the meaning.
Yes. Well, he has apologized, and he has sent his apology. That's what I understand that he has done, and apologized for the misconception. But when I see like the Advocates Network, I don't know if it's Advocates Network was in it, but the civil society, they came out and they asking for him to resign, and I just think about, I'm back again with this call for resignation, and I believe the he's a public official, but he's not. His constituent is not the people, in a
No,
sense.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So therefore, he's in a slightly different zone whereby their job is to scrutinize the government. And if you talk about bias, people say, well, he's PNP, or another time they say it was JLP, because the time when he was the contractor general, PNP was in power.
Yeah, yeah,
And then he was scrutinizing the PNP very hard. And then Andrew Holness brought him back into the fold
yeah.
as part of the Integrity Commission, because maybe that was seen as in their favor. But now, but what they're seeing is that he cannot be bought. So so my thinking is that what should happen is just ease back, because I believe they're onto something, and the chips must fall in certain way. And I believe that I think these things benefit the government. I think any sort of investigation of this era benefit the government, benefit Andrew Holness, benefit, because what you're doing, you're cleaning ship. And you said it the other day when Andrew Holness came back from some event and there was some big thing happening. What he did, he came in and said, well, there are lessons to be learned,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I believe in that nature there could be some lessons that could be learned on this particular thing, because I guess what they want now for the Integrity Commission is to beef up their security.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
understand that the person actually got a briefcase.
Mm-hmm. And then the question, what's in that briefcase? And people are saying it could be Robert. But the question then becomes, Silborn, is
Yeah.
this. If you just take the word at its face value, does that impede how he does his job? So just take the statement as it is.
Yeah.
He's the ED, executive director.
Yeah.
Does this statement prevent him from doing his job impartially? Right. I think that's a bigger question, right?
Yeah.
Is is this going to bias the way he conduct going forward? And
Mm,
a rational person will probably say no, right? He just made an utterance, and he probably should have thought through
mm,
the words that he's using, because as you said, he's been forceful, especially when he was the contractor person. Now saying,
yes.
as you said, he can't be bought, because I believe sunshine is the biggest disinfectant, right? So whatever you can put out there, let's put it out there and let the people
Mm,
judge. And the people just have to judge, Mr. Christie by his action going forward, to say, is he an impartial integrity commission? Is he, sort of looking at both sides of the coins equally, right? And don't care about the color you wear.
yes.
And I think sometimes people sort of use everything when you're in a role that is a critical role that helps in the governance and the trust that people see in government. Everybody's going to look for something, because you want that person out because you think that person is too strong, right? So every word will be scrutinized. And it
Yeah.
goes back to what we were talking about, that he has to be a little bit more intentional in the word he used, right? There's certain policymaker, certain public officials, they have to, right? It's not like they're sitting in their house and they're having a chat with their mate, right?
Yes.
Your words will be scrutinized. Your words will be looked at. Your words will be dissected. So
Yes.
if you know that, then you might want to be a little bit more intentional about that. But I don't see, and maybe others have different perspective on this
Yes.
front, but I don't see how the words equate to him being not able to do his job
His
effectively,
job. Yeah.
unless there are other things there that are implied, right? That people are taking that it means something else. So I think it's, to your point, there's a lot of times people are creating a political view of everything you do, because as you
Yes.
said, he was appointed under one administration, he's now appointed, and back then they didn't like him because they scrutinized
Yeah.
him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, he was a very serious contractor general. I think the one after that was Dirk. Actually, I don't even know who was the contractor general. Or they have, or that office is no more, and it's a part of the Integrity Commission. I don't
Yes.
know.
I don't know, but he was because remember there was the thing that he brought down, I believe, was the light bulb scandal.
Yes.
That was one of his big case, right? So
Karen Spencer. It was Karen Spencer at the time. Yeah.
yeah, but
He
that
was
was a
trying. Yeah.
Indian guy, right? I think I remember, right? But he was hard on both parties. So
He was. Yeah.
yeah, I think maybe people want a more meek
Somebody.
person.
Well, I mean, you understand, Mika, you're going to think about Jesus, but Jesus will use his whip and get them out of the tent, get them out of the temple as well. Somebody say, why resign for saying, ask the government? It looks like a media distraction at work. I mean, one of the things about Jamaica at the same time, this is Cool Breeze, someone on TikTok just said it. One of the things about Jamaica is that there's always an excitement about breaking news. There's always trying to find something to spin it. And you see so many spinning. I don't know. It was some government person said something the other day, and I was looking at it and I said, "My days, they're just spinning things. They're gonna spin." And I wrote, "These guys are gonna spin so much. They're gonna look like a gig." You know what I mean? You remember gig? You know, you see a gig.
Yeah. I
You
used to make a gig. I
know?
make a gig too. I used to take the wood and make the gig.
Yeah.
But the thing is that you're in a world, Silver, of information, disinformation, misinformation, and
Yes.
it's
Yes.
only going to get worse with artificial intelligence, Gen AI, the ability to create and targeted. And you're looking at words
Mm.
where now we're living in a world where you don't know if the content was created by a human being or it was created by an artificial intel or a augmented intelligent agent, right? So if you sort of look at a lot of the clickbait online, a lot of those things are written, headlines are written for you to click on them, because
Yeah.
oftentimes you see an article, you click on it, and then you read the article, it's like it has nothing to do with headlines.
And sometimes you read. I mean, I'm like one of those persons who sometimes before I even read the article properly, I'm reading the comments, and
Yeah.
in the comments, someone will say, I can I can bet you guys have not read the article. Because what everybody's running at, everybody's just running at
The
actually
headline.
the clickbait factor there,
Exactly.
and not
Exactly.
actually going for the article and the
Exactly.
substance of it. And I think one of the exciting things, well, I say exciting things about Jamaica, because as I said, I find it interesting because I communicate with my mates in Jamaica every day. Really, these
Mhm.
guys are some influential position, and they say, "CD, have you heard the latest one?" I said, I mean, the one when what's her name resigned. I had someone from Advocacy Network actually sending me
Right.
information when the lady resigned, and the guy sent it to me 2 hours later. No, when the person was sending it to me, Cliff Hughes, I was watching Cliff Hughes, and he didn't know yet. And I was saying to my guy, listen, I knew it before Cliff Hughes knew.
It's the breaking news.
That was breaking news. So my
Breaking
guy,
news.
I said to my virgin, I said, listen, man, listen, I got the breaking news before Jamflex series, man.
But it's sort of the same thing. If you, I think it was 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks, I don't remember,
Yeah.
where we had a guest, and because there's a point of view that I have that there's progress in Jamaica, right? This person says, well, you must be aligned to one color, right?
Mm.
Because you said there are positive things going on. And I'm like,
Actually, that night when you were talking about that thing, a couple person messaged me and said they shut off. They couldn't deal with it anymore.
and then they're like, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, you know, the one thing I always never liked suburbanism, and I know it's like I never like intellectual and dishonest people,
Mm.
because when people say, well, if you don't agree with me, then therefore you must be aligned somewhere else, right?
Yes.
And I think we have to be able to have debate in public square, right? You could make the argument, especially if we go back to when we were chatting, is that should the government has focused on sort of the exterior roads first,
Mm.
right? You could have that argument to say, hey, maybe we shouldn't have focused on the highways. We should have focused on the interior roads because more people use those interior. That's a valid argument, right?
Yes.
But if you take the position that the roads that the government built today doesn't impact the people, I'm like, what planet are you living under?
Yeah.
Right? It's like maybe I am missing something, right? Where I'm like, you and I talk about it afterwards, because I'm like, if I drive from Spanish Town to Ocho Rios and I don't have to go through Mount Rasa anymore,
Yeah.
it means it's a shorter distance. I'm using less gas, right? Less wear and tear on my vehicle. How is that not helping the people?
Well. One thing for sure, though, you're not going to go through faith spend, and you're not going to help those people.
Yeah, but it's like right, but that's a valid discussion to have, to say,
Yes.
you know, it's that infrastructure has been there. The question becomes, how do we make sure the government is taking care of those people and
Yeah.
migrating them to where they are? But it's where, again, it goes back to sort of words, how you use words.
We use words. Yeah.
You go back to, what should be the decorum of our public officials.
Mm. Mm.
And I'm one that says, you have to be very careful of the words you use,
Yes.
and you have to lead by example as well. And I you know I don't know the speaker of the house, but she has decided that her name is more important than any political office,
Yes. Yeah.
and she's made that decision. And the thing that we have to do is, whether you agree or not around that resignation, it's good for her to say, you know what, I disagree with the outcome of the report.
Or
It
the
was
alligator.
the allegation. It was an honest omission, and therefore, in the interest of the people, in the interest of serving the people effectively, I am going to resign. I
Yes.
give her kudos for that,
Yes.
and he has now set a high bar.
Mm.
And maybe we as citizens, Silver, should set that high bar to say, if there implication of corruption, whatever, you should resign. It's like in the US here, if you're a congressman or a woman and you get convicted of whatever and you go to prison, you keep your pension.
Okay.
You keep your pension. You
Mm.
keep all your benefits. That is not taken away, right? And I don't know if it's the same thing in Jamaica. If you're convicted of anything, you keep your pension or
Is
whatever
it
it
is it will it be classified as proceeds of crime?
is. No,
What,
they make sure
yeah.
they pass laws that actually
One second. I want to thank those guys on Instagram coming on. Hi Stacy, how are you? Dine, Fantia, Lysandra. Thank you for joining and let me know where you're from and share the and also on TikTok. Thank you also and Facebook and Instagram. What we're talking about is the scandals and public uh officer's resignation in Jamaica. We're looking at Greg Christie and the former speaker, looking at the when is the right time to resign. So we're having this discourse and this discussion, and we'd love to hear your views as well as to when is the right time and was the speaker should she get kudos for stepping down and why did she step down as an MP? But at the same time, what we are picking up is that maybe as a lawyer herself, she's got to ensure that her name is at the highest level, and as we have agreed and discussed, the name is one of the most important thing at the same time. Yes, on it.
Yeah. So Michelle, he didn't get convicted. He was indicted. Um, so they just indict him. So it's not convicted. So
Mm.
he was indicted. Right. So he's the head of the Foreign Affairs Committee. So it was an indictment that came down.
So will he have to step back? He's stepping back now. I mean, Bob.
So he's not resigning as a senator. He's a senator from New Jersey.
Yeah.
He was indicted, not convicted. And he's stepping aside as the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee.
Mm.
So he's so that will play out. There's a ton of people who have been calling for his resignation. He came out with a couple of statements to the fact that is because he's a Latina
Cuban, isn't it? Is it Cuban affiliate?
an American, that people are piling up calling for his resignation. But it's both sides of the aisle. But to the point that we're making is, as a public official, if your integrity is impugned and there's distrust, the question for you: can you serve your constituents effectively? Right? Can you serve the people effectively when there's a cloud hanging over you? And that's the thing, right? That he has to figure out. But I love the idea of holding public official accountable and
Yes.
public official taking the stance to say, my name is greater and I'm going to clear my name. And therefore, I'm going to resign. If you remember, one of the biggest scandal back in the day in Jamaica was the Petrodram scandal. If you
Yes.
remember, with the former Prime Minister, P.J. Patterson. And I don't remember the detail. I think he was cleared, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And I remember when he resigned, because remember, he resigned that position. And in the resignation speech, he said, I will be back. And
I will be back. I
and
remember.
became Prime Minister. Right. So
Yes. Yes.
maybe this is the same thing with Miss Dalrymple is saying, look, I'm going to resign. I'm going to go clear my name and I'll be back serving the people.
And who knows, by the time she comes back, because of course there's going to be a by-election in Jamaica for that particular constituency as she has resigned. Who knows, she may come back as well in regards to that. That is very interesting. The interesting thing though about with Greg Christie and everything now, and as what you said, if it is to set a standard, who captures these moments and say set the standard? Because I think something which is failing and which is a miss, and you mentioned earlier about signing something. There is something to be signed. There is a code of conduct which they all should sign. And if my memory doesn't fail me, and I think I'm correct, only the opposition members have actually signed that document there, the code of conduct, and it has the tenets of leadership as well. And they haven't signed it.
Yeah, that's in itself, if that's the case, is troubling. But I also believe, though, Silver, we have to separate the Mr. Christie and the Speaker of the House. I think they're two separate sort of thought process here, because one, a Speaker of the House, Member of Parliament, right, a investigation was conducted, and then the results were shared, and it was said that she was referred to be charged, and she took the action. With Mr. Christie, it was an incident that a member of his team was shot, and the reporter asked him a question, and he asked the government. So to me, it's sort of, and then now people are calling for him to resign based
Yeah.
on he asked the government. Three words, as you said. But we talked about it where you could interpret that in many different ways. Ask the
Mm.
government. Was he say ask the police? Was he implying something differently? So I think they're two separate
Yeah.
cases, but both in itself, I think the standard that was set by Mr. Impro
Yes.
and Christie is what we talked about. As public official, you have to be very intentional about your words.
Yes.
I think with Mr. Christie, we talk about it. Can he continue to do his job? And I think he can.
Yes.
All right, is what my rational thought is saying.
Mm.
Others might have different opinion on that, but
Yes. Yes.
I think it's two different buckets, and I don't see why he should resign, or
Mm.
I do not understand why he's been called to resign. I just don't get it.
Yes. 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 Okay, well, we can move on from this and quickly. We don't want to stay too long on the show tonight, but a recent interview in the UK with the president of Guyana. I don't know if you saw it.
Guyana.
Guyana, yeah. Dr. Mohammed Irfan Ali discusses reparation on ITV's Good Morning Britain,
Mhm.
and there's been some criticisms of that in the sense that the reporter or the guy was interviewing him was a bit very condescending. I'm
Mhm.
going to play it a bit because it brought up some good point about reparation, because reparations keep coming up a lot. Doctor, not doctor, but Julian Robinson, his dad, is one of the judges at the Hague, and he also was very vocal recently that the UK need to pay reparations and need to really deal with this thing. And I did ask you the question earlier that in America, have there been anything like a Truth and Reconciliation Commission similar to like South Africa?
Mhm.
Um, and it's like this is not happening,
Yeah.
and more people are coming and talking about it as well. So it's not going to go away.
I think it's funny you brought up Guyana because I saw I forgot what show. There was a debate of whether Guyana is part of the Caribbean, right? So,
Yes, yes, South America. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so I was like, no, they're not part of the Caribbean. Well, yeah, I thought it was funny that this, because I was watching some show and there's a big debate about whether they're part of the Caribbean or not.
Really? Oh,
Uh,
there. Yeah, I think that's it. They're South America, isn't it?
yeah, but they're part of the Caribbean.
And part of CARICOM as well,
Yeah,
isn't it?
exactly.
But yeah, but let me play this. Let me just play this for a few minutes of this interview, if I can just get it. Yeah.
Assembly on this subject later today. So we've got in early with you. Okay, let me ask you a question, Mr. President, on behalf of all of our viewers who would be covered by this. Why should somebody who maybe had an ancestor 7 or 8 generations ago, long before they were a twinkle in their great-great-great-great-grandparents' eye, why should they have to pay now for what an ancient ancestor did? Or why should they apologize for what an ancestor did centuries ago? Why do they still carry that burden?
Oh, it's not a burden at all. You are one of the beneficiary of that slave trade. So this is not a burden. You should be concerned and you should pay because you today are still benefiting from the greatest indignity to a human being, and that is a slave trade. And not only did you benefit during the slave trade and your country developed, but look at what it caused the developing world. During slavery, resources was used to build your country, build up your capacity. You were able to then become competitive. You were able to invest in mechanization, and developing countries like ours were left behind. So you should be very concerned because you are a prime beneficiary of the exploits of slavery.
So put a figure on it, please, because it always comes down to the bottom line. How much should an individual taxpayer in a country like the UK be signing a check to a country like yours, Ghana?
Well, it's easy to calculate. We can use the time value of money. You can look at the period of slavery and the contribution not the contribution, the extraction of wealth from countries like ours, and how it was utilized to build your society, build your country, create wealth in your country, and then add the time value of money, and you will get the value. There's a lot of research paper on this. A lot of universities would have done paper on this. There's enough literature to tell us what that value is. But I want to say that it is not only the value, it is the loss of time. It is a loss of competitiveness. It is a loss of human dignity. It is a loss of our education system. It is the culture that we lost. It is all of this indignity that surrounded slavery that we must consider.
O'Neill, you have heard it, yeah?
Yeah, I've heard it, and there are many various versions of why repatriation and who should pay, etc. There's been a discussion. I think it's San Francisco actually has a committee that has been looking at it and coming up with recommendation. But he's making the point. His point of view is saying, if you take countries, you name it, they were able to sort of thrive based on the contribution that was provided by slaves.
Yeah.
Right? And therefore, because there were no payments made to those slave people who are involved in slaves, therefore we should figure out what that calculation looked like today, and we should pay reparation to Jamaica, Guyana, the Caribbean at large. You could say America, you could say Africa, right? So the question becomes, in what, is it a monetary or is it something else? Because I think to your point, he makes a great point, great perspective that when you look at a place like the UK, right, they were built on the backs of slavery. And you also look at it from the perspective that the Windrush generation rebuilt Britain after the World War, right?
Yes.
It's been a topic that has been around for decades. And somehow I don't know how it will end, right? It's generation upon generation that have said that there should be some monetary compensation. My point of view on it, Silburn, is this. What I would like is for us to have the best schools, given the best set of opportunities, the best resources. If you look at it, there's about 2 million people that have emigrated from the Caribbean that lives in the U.S. now.
I just heard they said 1 million has been registered, or test, or some report recently about 1 million maybe on the register.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you look at the fact that there's a lot of Caribbean folks have come to the U.S., the U.K., Nigerians, and they have thrived, right? So I don't know the answer to the question, Silver, because I'm still struggling to figure out, in the age where, if you look at a lot of our communities, we still have not the best housing. We still have lack of equitable education. We still don't have access to health care, right? We still are, not getting the things that we need to thrive in a way that is going to benefit all. So I wonder if the narrative should shift to say, why don't we go invest?
Why don't we what?
Invest in education.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, there's a generation, but should the argument be that we should figure out how to spend $1 trillion to improve our healthcare, our education? So if you look at it, the UK, the European Union, and one could argue a different way whether it's right or not, but that's not the purpose, is that we're spending money in wars. We've
Yeah.
spent, I think, by all estimate, the Iraq war probably cost us about 3 or 4, some people said $7 trillion.
Mm.
Should we go spend $1 trillion in the Black and brown communities? Right. So to me, I would love for the argument to shift to say, why don't we go do a Marshall Plan
Yes.
in Black and brown communities, right? Both in the UK, what are some of the things we could provide to developing countries? Should we go forgive their debt?
Mm.
So Jamaica, for example, their debt to GDP is now, I believe, 70%.
Yeah.
Right. Should we just go do debt forgiveness for every country in the Caribbean? Right. So to me, if we should move away from, this narrative around, yes, let's go take money from these folks and then give it because your ancestor, and move it to where it's a more actionable thing to say, let's go forgive the debt of the Caribbean, right?
Mm.
Because that will wipe out, I don't know if someone could do that, but to me, that will give the government more resources to then spend on healthcare, roads, infrastructure, etc., education. And you do the same thing in Africa, right? So to me, I don't think there's very specific around, what we should do and we should not. Because for me, why should you give me $1? Because one, I'm Jamaican by birth, right? I came to this country. Should I benefit from that, whatever monetary? I would rather us go do a Marshall Plan in the Black and brown community where we're improving healthcare, we're improving outcomes within their educational system, the access to XYZ, you name it. I would rather go focus on that. And then I would champion debt forgiveness in the Caribbean.
So what you're talking about then, instead of having this ballpoint figure, because the end of the interview they were saying, and all of reporters came on and they said, well, what he did not give us was a figure. There was not a figure.
Right.
And everybody talks about a figure sometime. And they say, where will you give that figure to? Who's going to get that figure? Please don't give it to the government or so. But what you're talking about is more of a strategic way, because like Haiti, for argument's sake, they said Haiti paid off France
$7 billion, almost $7 billion.
Yeah, and it's like one could see the decline based on these paying back, and even like countries which are tied in with IMF, also tied in with different debts. I mean, they say Russia is actually forgiving a lot of these debts. You're talking about something a bit more strategic, something a bit more education, because like in the UK of recent days, as if you recall, you may have seen it, and I discussed it a couple of times about the girl who was having the fight with the Asian guy regarding a wig or some hair. But what came out of it is the fact that the hair industry in the UK, black hair industry, is a major multi-million industry. But the majority of the persons, well, the people who control it really are the Asians.
Yeah.
So it is more a way whereby, not that you're going to have a similarity to positive discrimination, like you're gonna sort of forego if 5 persons come for this particular shop site, you're gonna actually, if there's one black person, you make sure a black person goes in. But that doesn't mean to say it's gonna be beneficial, because that person may not be equipped.
Yeah. I just looked at the number, Silburn, and I don't know if it's correct. The total debt for Latin America and the Caribbean is $5.8 trillion.
Yes.
Yeah, the debt of the US is now at $33 trillion. So
USA.
Yeah, for the US.
Is that China they own it to?
Yeah, all over.
Yeah.
But the question becomes, if you look at Latin America and the Caribbean and you say there's $2 trillion there, go forgive the debt of all those Caribbean nations. And I don't know what it is for Africa. And I think that will give you a good starting point, because now the government has the resources to go help the people move up the ladder. So I think there needs to be a much more targeted discussion around the
Operation.
the monetary aspect of this and what it could look like, because I think people would probably be more advocating on our behalf if we're a little bit more specific. Because when like I think in San Francisco they said, well, give every person $5 million. I'm like, okay, you're right. If you do that, we are so far removed. How do you trace it? Do O'Neill get, because again, I'm Jamaican. I was born in Jamaica. I was born in the US. Do I get as part of
Yes.
the whole push? So,
And can I just actually pop across there and just spend $1 million to get my stay and my pay somebody and get the other 4 million?
so it's an interesting point, and
Yeah.
I think it always pop up now and then. And I think when King Charles took over, there was a lot of narrative around, right? There's the whole move away from the monarchy that was part of it. How much should they pay, etc. So I don't have the right answer for it, but I think it's a narrative that has been there, and I just don't know how we articulate it in a way that will get folks to say, listen, because then you have folks, if you look at it from a British perspective, to say, okay, how much of taxpayer money should you take and give to Jamaica? Right. And should I then put a tax on the entire British population to go pay back Africa and Jamaica? So the question becomes, where you get the money from?
Yeah.
Right. Do I put a tax on, you name it?
I think one of the things though is that anytime like Caribbean leaders are going to the UN, they're coming to England, some big things are happening. Somehow it's like this woke culture come upon them. I don't know if the right word is woke culture. And then they start to talk about reparations. And you wonder if they shouldn't really, or the Caribbean leaders and the South American / West Indies who joined together as Guyana should come together really and to somewhat sit down and have a strategic plan instead of everyone shooting off somewhere down the line.
Yeah.
Julian Robinson father shoot off something the other day. This president shoot off something the other day. And everybody's saying, here we go again. They're not coordinated.
Yeah, you have to have the right set of talking points that the leaders of the Caribbean are agreeable on to say, let's push for debt forgiveness, right? And it doesn't have to be full debt forgiveness. You could say we need partial debt forgiveness or whatever the strategy is.
Yes.
Advocate for those things. Put it in your speech on the UN floor to say why, right? And then you sort of go from there. But this was a good debate. But I gotta run. It's 6 o'clock my time is what.
Yes. Now I got a big thing also in the morning as well. So I think it's so important that we cover things and ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to be doing actually on this show as well is to have some strategic discussions, not just have a drink, but to really tight. So therefore, one can always go back and watch it and get some real good meat as well. So
Let's do one on artificial intelligence, because an important one, especially for our Black community to pay attention to, because if you just look at the areas that will be disrupted by artificial intelligence, a significant amount of Black folks work and brown people work in those areas. Service area is a perfect example. So I think we should do a deep dive in artificial intelligence and what it means for our community.
I think so as well, because a friend of mine who I follow in the States, he actually said he wrote about 6 or 7 books and he loved writing books. And he said he's so grateful for artificial intelligence to help him to sort of write more books. And so he has created a platform to help people in this particular area. And I think myself is delving into it and learning about it, as you have encouraged me as well. Because sometimes we try to run away from these things. It's a devil, you know, come for us and so like that. But we got to get at it,
All right.
Okay, O'Neill, take care of yourself, man.
All right, cool.
Peace out. God bless. Cheers. Bye-bye. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for joining tonight, and great discussion that we have had, talking about the government, talking about resignation, talking about political accountability, talking about Mr. Christie, and talking also about the whole advent of reparation as the governor for the government of Guyana is also talking about that. Yeah, I'm sorry to say that this problem in Black Caribbean, we can't come together as one and execute. Um, Michelle, that's as I alluded a while ago, and it's really unfortunate, very unfortunate that after all these years, um, all the leaders, just like how you got this thing called Vision 2030, all the leaders should really, in a strategic way, come together, formulate a plan, and actually stick by it, whichever government comes in for the different Caribbean countries. If you're going to go by the Caribbean only, or you're going to go for all the countries who have been implicated in the transatlantic slavery movement. Because if everybody keep firing shots, the Guyanese president fire one shot, Mr. Robert George Robinson firing one shot, Andrew Holness come across in the UK and fire one shot. Well, Andrew Holness and the government of Jamaica, they're not actually saying much. Even regarding the whole reparation thing, there's a massive silence. I don't know if you guys realize there's a massive silence there. Um, and that silence, after we even had the one in London, there's a massive silence. It's like you got to unearth it. I'm sure things are written down, but it is not like coming in front of you in your face. And I believe it's very important that they all come together, because the Brits and the those who are actually, as somebody said the other day, they are not going to give you the money that they have just like that. And I still say, up to this day, there's not something which is considered as a Truth and Reconciliation Commission that was a part of slavery, and which is very unfortunate. And I believe that can only be through a lack of leadership at the same time. So therefore, there need to be strong leadership as much as possible. All right. So that's it there. Before I go, I want to just wrap up, because something I was just reading the other day, and I think it is something that is really powerful as to it is when political leaders should resign. And it says the question of when political leaders should resign is a pivotal one. What we spoke about earlier was the speaker and the MP, but I'm looking at leadership. And it said when the political leaders should resign is a pivotal one, and it touches the very essence of our democratic ideals. A political leader's tenure should be guided by a profound sense of duty to people they represent. Firstly, leaders should consider stepping down when their actions or policies compromise the fundamental values and principles upon which our society is built. When their decisions erode the trust of the public or undermine the rule of law, they must acknowledge their accountability and make the honorable choice to resign. Furthermore, political leaders should assess their effectiveness in delivering on their promises and commitments. If their tenure is marked by a persistent inability to address pressing issues, foster unity, or uphold the welfare of their constituents, which would be the country, it is imperative that they evaluate their capacity to lead. Resignation in such cases may not only be an act of humility, but also a sign of respect for the office they hold and the people they serve. In the end, decision of when political leaders should resign is a complex one, ladies and gentlemen. But above all, it should be rooted in a genuine desire to serve the best interests of the people and the nation they lead, always with the recognition that leadership is a profound responsibility, not a privilege. And ladies and gentlemen, that is my word for today. And I trust that somehow, with the latest developments in Jamaica, with the resignation of the speaker from the House and also a resignation of MP, will set us another bar. And in regards to Mr. Christie, asked the government, which he said, and I believe that it was appropriate. No, let me clarify. It is understandable because his colleague almost died. They shot his colleague and they robbed his colleague. Yeah, and there was a tussle, what I understand. So therefore, he was visibly shaken as well. So one has got to give him a blight, and he did apologize as well. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Thank you those on TikTok. Thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you those on Instagram. Thank you so much for that. Thank you, Oni, for joining Michelle, and on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you very much. And Saturday night again, we'll be back on Talk and Sip. And definitely, we're going to dig deep and explore artificial intelligence, Chat GPT, because that is something that we've got to really cane and get to have a knowledge of that. All right. Peace out. God bless you. Bye bye. Thank you. Remember to like and subscribe as well to the Silver Show, and we'll talk. Okay.
Let's go.
Okay.